either of you rest your eyes on my work. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I love to make work that's for people who are too busy to do anything else. So it's not the kind of book that you have to read like in one sitting. You could kind of just crack it open to a page. Yeah, so no worries.
It's an excellent way to look at it, in my opinion. And we are coming up on live here. I'll screen really quick. Can you all still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okie dokie. Folks, we got started a little late today, but hopefully that gave everyone a little bit of time to roll in and get comfortable. We'll be getting started in just a few seconds with our wonderful guest, Natasha Marin and Christian Ivey, discussing Black imagination.
Christian, I was stalking you on Instagram earlier and I couldn't figure out, is this image, did you make that?
No, I so basically I like, since I write stories, I've been like collecting like illustrators. So when I'm ready, like I'm already know like who I'm gonna go to. So I have like, I don't know, a little back end of like 10 or so folks. And this person is a young individual that only did this graphic for $17. I was like, no, we have to pay you more.
The robberies. I just
so talented and so good. I was like, I don't feel comfortable only giving you this little bit of money for this graphic. So about a year ago, it was gifted to me from someone, and yeah. So that's just like, I used to have like locks, and they were like, they wouldn't drop, so they were just like spiky.
All right, everyone.
I love the image.
It's such a gorgeous image. The number of people that paint or draw you, Christian, is kind of remarkable to me.
I'm trying to like, I was just saying, I'm building up a collection. So like, when I get my graphic novels ready, I'm like, I know where to go to.
Great. So welcome everyone who is watching. I'd like to introduce who we have with us today. Oh, I'm in the wrong area of. Let's try going to the beginning.
Would you let people join?
My name is Shady Rose, and I'm your host for the night. My name is Shady, and I'm your host for the night. I'm here to represent Lost City Books, which is owned by Adam, a veteran and dog lover and longtime resident of DC, and an enthusiastic disseminator of books. Our close-knit team is a collection of some of DC's coolest kids, of which Christian and I have both been some of over the years. Artists, educators, musicians, writers, and of course, avid readers, all coming together to enrich our unique environment. Tonight we have joining us Natasha Marin, the curator of Black Imagination, which you'll find on the shelves at Lost City Books. Natasha is a conceptual artist whose people-centered projects have circled the globe and have been recognized and acknowledged by the Art Forum, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, and others. In 2018, Marin manifested Black Imagination, which we're going to be talking about tonight, the States of Matter, the Glistening and Ritual Objects, a triptych of audio-based conceptual art exhibitions in and around Seattle, Washington. Black Imagination is community-based, ongoing, and continues to amplify, center, and hold sacred a diverse sample of Black voices, including LGBTQIA+, Black youth, incarcerated Black women, Black folks with disabilities, unsheltered Black folks, and Black children. And these are all incredibly important voices to hear. So Natasha, welcome today so much. And we're so excited to talk with you about your book.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. What a great way to start the week.
I'll tell you a little bit, you all viewers, a little bit about Black Imagination, using a quote from the Foreword by Steven Dunn. Don't think for 1 minute that Black imagination is easy. As you will read here, it is hard-earned and sometimes dangerous, but it's necessary and radical to claim and work towards. Listening to my people in this book gave me so much life, and I'm pretty sure, dear reader, you're in for the same. And I definitely felt very strongly that that was true as well as I began exploring this work. Next up, our guest tonight is Christian M. Ivey, using he, they pronouns. Christian is a Black speculative writer and editor from Pontiac, Missouri? Michigan? Currently residing in Berkeley, California, working as a digital comm specialist for OBI. His work focuses on communication as a key tactic in the digital and print sphere, exploring the gray area between Afrofuturism and Afro-pessimism, which I think is a really interesting line to tread and to walk and to think about. Great, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen and allow our guests here to say hello to you all. Christian or Natasha, if you want to say hello to our viewers tonight.
Hello, good evening. As you can see on the West Coast, the sun has decided to act like she comes around here, which she really doesn't very often. So it's shocking to have light. It's hopeful. It means spring is coming. I think it's much later on in the evening for you all, but it's really nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And Christian, would you like to give a quick hello to our viewers tonight?
Yeah, it's also, I'm also on the West Coast, even though my background's kind of different. But yeah, it is sunny and kind of warm here, which is nice. I'm not used to winter being like this. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. So we're here today to discuss Black Imagination, which is, as we saw a little bit of, is an incredible piece of work. And I'd like to first sort of talk to you, Natasha, and hear from you about your experience in collecting and curating this work. For example, I think it took you, or it's an ongoing project, I suppose, but can you tell me a bit about the journey that you went on, how the people that you met, the contributions that you found notable?
Yeah, sorry about the loud traffic sounds in the background. If you can hear them, hopefully the sirens will like chill this evening. My family is noisy though, so I screamed at them. Like you do. The journey has been kind of beautiful and very lush. I feel like the landscape of our imaginations just keeps giving. And it was such a small and easy practice to begin listening to Black people. That it made me wonder immediately, like, why hadn't I done this as praxis before, like as part of what I do on purpose, not just like in happenstance and passing. I'm thinking of a book by Zora Neale Hurston, Every Tongue Will Confess. Am I ruining the title? In it, like, to me, she is like striving to not just capture the information, but the dialectic of how the information is coming across, like the way it would sound in your ear if you were hearing it. And, I read that book so long ago, but I guess it just like, these things stay alive in us and they kind of ferment and like gestate. So I think I wanted Black imagination to feel a little bit like you could hear it, even though it's a book, because for me, this began as a series of audio exhibitions. So I guess I should start at the beginning. My God, you all weren't there, but it feels like you were. So I feel like you already know what happened. Okay. So I started by collaborating with other Black women who are already doing too much. And that's an exciting way to start any venture, because it's very humbling. You definitely get to meet and encounter your own boundaries, your own bandwidth. But I think if there were a collective noun for Black women, it would be like an overabundance of capability. So there was so much ability in the space that we were helping each other, we were there for each other, and there was a lot of sound as a result. So folks who showed up to that first exhibition were going as though they expected to see like things on a wall, visual things in the visual sphere. And they showed up at the gallery. The first thing we did is blindfold everyone. It was already pitch black in there. So there's like protesting, there's the whole like, but I can't see if I take off my glasses. And then I would introduce them to our docent, Ayanna Hobson, who is legally blind and a nationally recorded vocal artist. And she would literally sing people through a web of voices. There were also real people in this space doing call and response, maybe making music, maybe doing breath work, maybe dancing. So very oral, AURAL. And I wanted that to translate into the book somehow. So I worked really hard to sort of preserve the way people spoke. And some of the submissions were in audio form, and I transcribed them, and others came in as text. But I can't remember how long ago it was that I heard this, but apparently scientists have studied our brains when we're doing various activities, and the area of the brain that lights up when you're listening to music is the same sort of area of the brain that lights up when you're reading, because we're actually listening to our voices read to us, which I think is kind of fascinating. So reading is listening too. And I very much wanted this. I mean, I think of this as an exhibition. It's just in book form because I'm weird like that. I wanted this exhibition to be like a community of voices, like a village that you could take with you. An antidote to loneliness is kind of where I was when I was putting this together. I'm a rambler. We're gonna call that three
No,
planets of Pisces, but I'll do my best to hold the line today for you.
No, please. That was a really beautiful way to put it as well. I definitely got that sense from the work that it is meant to be a community. Like the book itself is a community, right? It has that aspect of many voices and many experiences coming together with a singular commonality and purpose. So I can definitely feel what you're describing there. Can you tell me a little bit about some of these voices that are a part of your work? Some of the specific voices that you've encountered over the years of working on this, between the audio work and the psycho audio work, maybe I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm like flipping open to the contributors page, because anytime somebody asks me a question about the contributors, I instantly like blank and panic. So I need to reassure myself. I mean, and the thing is, like, for the most part, I absolutely do know these folks, and it's not like I could forget them. But just like as I cast my eyes across these names, a few really stand out. Some people in Black imagination are what we would call like quote unquote proper writers, right? Like they have put effort into the craft of writing. They have attempted to be published and have successfully been published before in various literary outlets. But that is not sort of like the basis. What qualified folks to add their voice to this project was just their Blackness. Like, are you Black every day? Great, awesome. And then from there, we really, um, because this is like a translation of an audio immersive experience, I am still thinking collectively, even though I curated the book by myself. It's such a collective project that I'm still thinking of how we made choices for the exhibition. And we thought about like, who needs to be heard, excuse me, right now? And that's like young Black people, single Black moms, Black folks from the LGBTQIA plus community, Indigenous Black folks, like people who, for whatever reason, are not usually center stage. For me, the first thing that happened when I started focusing as praxis on listening to Black people as though each and every Black person I was listening to was like a living treasure, the first thing that changed was the realization that like learning is completely our responsibility. It's like a posture, it's like a mental posture. And if you are ready to learn, you absolutely will learn. You absolutely will get something from what is said. And not to get all esoteric or anything, but these are the things that I think about. Um, you know, Quantum physicists are telling us that, it's a particle and it's a wave. And when you look at it, it happens that like something in the moment of observation is like collapsing reality into itself. And when I went to people as though they were like ascended masters, like no matter where you're from, like you're going to bestow some pearl of wisdom upon me. What I felt like was happening was that kind of like wave particle thing where like if I listen to you as though you're going to give me pearls of wisdom, what I then receive is pearls of wisdom. And I'm not sure who's starting it or like how this is working, but I feel like there's just so much wisdom that we have to share, and so much validation that comes from hearing Black people you completely don't know from, Adam, to be colloquial, tell you like your life story or not your life story, a completely different story, which is still validating because it validates the idea that, we are not monolithic, that we are like fingerprints. Each one of us is absolutely unique and is having a unique experience, even though we are all having a shared experience of being Black in this world. Again, I really feel like I'm rambling. Shady, I'm gonna need you to like rein me like all the way in, just like metaphorically grab me by the back of the head, just yank me back, be like, here, we're coming back. We're coming back to the question because my mind today is just all over the place.
It's great though. And I'd love to hear too from both of you something that struck me. This is kind of a two-part question, kind of related to what you were just talking about. It really struck me the way that the book is divvied up into imagine and then interlude rituals and then healing, interlude rituals, coda rituals. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts are and why you chose this sort of, it almost reminds me of a breath in a way, You have the breath in of imagine and then the breath out interlude rituals, breath in the healing, breath out interlude of rituals again.
I was writing. Oh, sorry. What was that, Christian?
I was thinking like an album, like a CD, like interludes. And so like that also gave me that audio kind of like vibe aesthetic thing, like you were describing earlier.
Yeah, I think sound is really fascinating because what I learned being in space with Ayanna Hobson, who is just an absolute I want to use a word that conveys mastery without the word master. So circle back to me, folks, think tank, when we figured out what that one is. Because literally every time I talk about mastery or master, it just, I don't like the, we need to I don't know that you can decolonize English, but we can try. But Ayana is just, amazing with her vocal instrument. And oftentimes we would sing in that space while people were going through. And I'm not a great singer, like by any stretch of the imagination. So I would sing badly, but I would sing badly and freely and joyfully. And she would circle back to me and say, like as someone who knows voices, you should not ever think that you should stop singing, because there's something really honest about what happens with your voice when you are singing. There's something really naked and transparent about how we show up with our voices, and also how we sort of perform and disguise with our voices. But I wanted to circle back to, I did remember actually what you asked me. You asked me about contributors, and I went off talking about whatever the heck I talked about. And I want to just like shout out Quentin Baker, because you have to understand that some of the pieces in here, I heard them read to me, like I heard these testimonies in my ear like hundreds of times over the course of a year before I was like, I'm transcribing this sucker and it's going into a book. And this was the case with Quentin Baker. And I'm going to torture you all because I'm going to read to you. I don't read this as well as Quentin Baker, but I can hear it in my mind's ear. My origin story is being object and subject, being put upon, pushed down, and pressed into something that I didn't know I needed to be or could be in order to survive to the next day or the next week. It's one of contortion, the way that I had to turn myself into different forms of refracted light just to escape the different types of gazes, grabs, hands, limbs reaching out. It's just like everything I encountered wanted a piece or part of me, wanted to take something. It felt like the origin of me was the origin of theft, and I had to learn how to not be stolen from while also stealing enough to keep myself alive. And like, damn, okay. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
thanks
Wow.
for summarizing that whole lived experience in a tidy, succinct, beautifully wrought paragraph. Not everybody can do that, but like I'm hearing it. When I read it, I'm actually hearing Quentin saying that in the pitch black darkness for a year. So I'm definitely having a different experience than other people are having when they go through this book. But it is this community of voices that I was like inhabiting in real space that I'm trying to kind of render with this book. I don't know how successful it is, but I have heard people say that they treat the book like a devotional, like a modern day contemporary, less problematic Bible, because we're not, doing a maypole around Jesus's white self, quote unquote. It's all quotes. So if you're offended, you're going to be offended anyway. I offend people. Worse things have happened. We're still alive. We're fine. We're still breathing. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's interesting to try to like create a space in which Blackness is upheld as sacred, healthy, whole, and in doing so, maybe make a practice for yourself of honoring your own joy, your own health, and your own imagination. And so I guess I'm like a little bit witchy. I'm definitely conceptual. People don't know what the heck conceptual art is. I'm fine with that. I usually tell them, don't worry, it doesn't pay any of my bills, like zero. And then I'm a human again and not a ego full of fart fluff and smugness. And then they can relate to me again.
Well, in some ways, I feel like relatability is overrated anyway. But at the same time, I think that what you say about having the feel of a devotional is really true. It definitely captures sort of captures the attention in that way of like taking a moment to see one's own sacredness and to see the sacredness of others. For example, even on just the first few pages where it says, close your eyes and let the white gaze disappear. And that's all that's on the page. That in itself is like a meditative moment that the reader is encouraged to participate in, right?
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear, Christian, as we're talking about sort of the witchier side and the more sacred side of Blackness, which I think is a great lens through which to understand this work and also some of your work. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, and if the two of you would like to discuss this about the that witchiness and that esoteric, Blackness that is being embraced more lately.
Let's get into the woo.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of stuff like I used to, I don't know, imagine like Black people getting together, like I don't know, like what you're saying, singing, being happy, like those type of things. And so those are the things like I would try to write about, like, what does this look like, and that kind of led me to where I'm at now is like, what does it look like for Black people to have like joy without violence? And we don't really get that, like kind of at all. And if you lean into like the Mediterranean Afro-pessimism, like that Black folks are monetary, that in the world runs off of us, then it's like it's almost like it never really exists. Like the whole world has to be destroyed in order for Black folks to be free. And so like kind of in the middle ground of that is where I find like Afrofuturism coming in and like imagining these like this safety, this joy, this happiness, and not contingent on like a capital or like a white supremacist sort of like logic or methodology. And I feel like that like really showed up a lot in the book without it necessarily being like very academic-y. It was just like these people were writing what does healing look like to them.
Mm-hmm. I didn't want it to be academic. There's enough of that out there already. Like there really is. I went to school with a lot of those folks. I'm glad they're doing, the Lord's work in their own way, clarifying their terms and all of that. Somebody has to. I just don't want to. And I'm more interested in making access for folks who you just don't see their work in print. You don't even see them in books. No one's sort of like making a pedestal on them for them to sort of be upheld on. And I really truly, as naive as it may be, I do believe we can all learn from each other. I think in the most fundamental way, like Black imagination, when it's for Black people, we know what we're getting out of it. So I was interested in different levels of access to the text itself, like it went out from McSweeney's, and, I think for people who know books, McSweeney's is known to be, pretty white, and I'm pronouncing the H like on purpose. But I don't know that would be the first thing you think of when you think of McSweeney's. I think most people think their books are really sexy. Like McSweeney's has like sexy books. And I certainly knew that about their books. I was like, ooh, my book is gonna be pretty. It's gonna look so good. And that I was excited about because I did want it to feel like a sacred text, like something that you wouldn't just, throw under your bed. Like maybe you do keep it next to the photo of your grandmother or something. And I wanted a space for spirituality and sacredness and like communing with something beyond ourselves that wasn't Christian, because like there's just so much, it's really fraught. That relationship is really fraught. And I think many of us are trying to sort of put ourselves back into the idea of divinity. We're trying to sort of reinsert ourselves into that script and that narrative, and we don't necessarily know how. So I was kind of trying to make space for that too. We'll see.
I definitely can see that. I think I like the idea of using it as sort of like a ritual experience. I used to get together weekly with folks and just part of like our weekly get together was just like kind of like doing like a little singing or a little dancing. And now there's just something that we share together, intentional, like this little pocket of joy. And that was just something that now that I don't do it is something I miss, like this intentionality of coming to this place that I know we can be ourselves there. And so I like the idea of that coming in sort of like something you can take with you, you know, not necessarily because of something like the pandemic where like we're no longer able to be as close or hold hands and be in communion as we like maybe used to under like non-Christian terms, but like move forward with that in terms of like a book, you know, what does these words do, these like these communications that we moving forward. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I feel like it works like that, and especially the vibe of it up, like again, like I mentioned before, it's kind of like an album. So it kind of really like, it has its themes that kind of flow, and then you get little brief little like interludes to divide it up and go into the next phase. So I was enjoying that.
It started in as a kind of like a recoil from a deep dive in the minds of Imani Sims and I. So we were sitting in a green room at a radio station, waiting to have a conversation about motherhood and like, I want to say like freedom from motherhood as two equal states. And we're listening to, so they like pipe in the sound that's live, right? So we're listening to what's currently happening on the radio, and it's two white men discussing police brutality. And we did that thing, you know, like in Gauguin's paintings, you can see how like women are having whole dissertation length conversations in just a glance. So we were having a whole psychic situation as we both were listening to these white men discuss police brutality. And I turned to Imani and I'm like, do you ever imagine revenge? Like, do you ever go there? Do you ever begin to imagine what revenge would look like? And so we got really quiet as we tried to go there. And I don't know how to describe it except that like internalized depression is a thing. And like there is a place inside of yourself where you are really like actually trying to bring just eye for eye type revenge forward in your imagination. And there's something actually stopping you from doing that. You get to like a security wall and alarms start going off and it's like, retreat, retreat, you know, we can't think like that. And I was like, as fascinated by that moment of recoil as I was in this sort of place of decision making where it was like, okay, let's swing all the way back from that direction. Like if this is one end of the pendulum where we're imagining revenge, like what is the other end? And we decided that it was just radical enough to unimagine whiteness, that just removing whiteness as the central pivoting force around all of our thoughts was just like a radical enough act as a place to begin. So it's kind of how that started. But I don't really know a lot about Afro-pessimism. Like I feel like because Clubhouse is a thing now, I get to hear a lot of really interesting conversations that, you know, are majority Black folks talking. And so I've learned a little bit more about Afro-pessimism that way, but like not to put you on the spot, but do you want to just like teach me the basics of Afro-pessimism so I'm not just talking out my ass?
Say that, like, I'm just gonna go with what like, so I'm reading like Frank Wilderson, Afro-pessimism, and like some other texts and related of it. And so like from like the, I guess like the briefest understanding of that I've been getting at is like it's a metadary and it's critiquing when folks say that Black people are like can't be safe or like whatever the case may be, whatever like humanism or whatever sort of theory there is out there that's saying like if Black people do this, then we're gonna magically have this sort of safety that we desire or that we should have. And Afro-pessimism usually just cuts through the face of it and says like, where does this exist at in the reality of this world? How does this manifest? What does this kind of look like? And when you have these like sort of like structural systems that are in play, that is like it gets just like it gets to the point where it's like the not just like a metaphoric like sense, but like the like Black people are monetary. It's like they are like slave, like it's in that sense like that. If you believe in social death or not like believe in it, but it's a moment.
Yeah, because social death was coming up in these
Yeah,
convos
so it's like that's like another part of it. That's why it's like a lot. I feel like to go through it, I'm all like, oh, I'm gonna mess this up. But usually talking it out, that's why I feel like you see a lot of it on Clubhouse because folks are talking these things out, exploring these ideas of like, cutting through this whole like
I'm
mist
not
of
like
like,
finding you on Clubhouse right now. Like,
I'm
watch
like
me
I've like been on
multitask.
there for like 2 hours like one time.
I don't care. I need to follow you.
But I think that's like an idea that I feel like just been resonating with me, not necessarily it's not pessimism just for the pessimism. It's just like I'm Black and I have this unique sort of oppression in this world. And so I'm handling it that sort of way. Instead of just saying that everything is gonna work for everybody else, is gonna work for me and Black people like me. So that's kind of like my short of it.
Found you. I'm following you. You're gonna follow me back.
We were looking for you
Because
on social media. I was gonna like tag you and stuff. You've been like tweeting stuff all like
you know
week.
what? I bless my heart, like retroactively. Let's bless my heart for the fact that I thought not using your actual name on social media four score and 70 years ago when I started would keep like your problematic exes from locating you, right? Just it's a collective bless
No,
my heart, right? Because that doesn't work at all.
They find a way.
They find a way. They find a way. So that didn't work, but I can now sort of tell how people know me, like the context that they know me from based on how they address me. So if you call me Natasha, we know each other in real life. And chances are, if you call me Tashi, then we know each other from the internet. And that's fine. There's no judgment. Some of the people I know just from the internet, I like better than people I know in real life. Like,
it's been like that.
it happens. It happens. So yeah. But okay, so I think I probably swing then from the Afro pessimist positionality to like an Afrofuturist personality. Like, and I think it's like I don't stay in one location for long because I think the space of Afro pessimism is kind of terrifying. It's a little terrifying for me. I'm a Canadian. This is how I'm explaining it. Like I'm Canadian as well as American and Trinidadian. And just like anything that's that decisive makes all the Canadian parts of me a little uncomfortable because I don't know that Canadians show up that way in the public space. It's like this way or that way. It's more like the friend that like is like, yeah, we're cool. Like, yeah, we're cool. They won't necessarily fight with you though, but like they'll roll. And act like they're ready to fight, but probably won't.
Yeah, I think that's what it's the hard part when it really comes down to it, like it's Black History Month, right? And the Judas movie comes out, and everyone's like the Black Panther Party and all about all means necessary. And like, what does that really mean? Like, what will it really take?
Oh, see, when I go there in my head, this is what it sounds like. This is why I'm problematic. And like, y'all should have probably vetted me harder before you brought me on your little live stream. Because I tell whole groups of people, like, if we really going to go hard, if we really going to revolution on these people at any point in time, imagine day one, just like all the white folks' pets gone, Saddam Hussein style on YouTube. Oh, you thought we were playing. We came for your dog. Because what I learned after Katrina was these people care about their dog. Like they will send the boats in for their dogs. The Black people will be on their roofs. All help me. Nope. Lassie is over there and I have got to rescue my dog. So help me God. I mean, if they had shown Donald Trump kicking a dog in the face, they would have gotten that man out of the office. He did everything else. But if they had just had some footage of him kicking a dog in the face, it would have been game over. Because, white folks care about certain things.
I mean, same thing. So many police officers only see charges when they, shoot a dog.
Yeah. I mean, if Black men literally carried small, like teacup poodles with them on their person, I bet fewer folks would get shot because it would be like, well, don't shoot the dog. Like that's cruelty. That's unreasonable. The dog could get hurt,
I'll argue that they would probably still shoot them. They probably think they stole the dog.
I mean,
So
you gotta imagine the chick at the side in the yoga pants with a pumpkin spice latte, like screaming and running to throw herself in front of the dog. Like,
we lived in
because
DC. Well, Shay lives in DC. We've seen people go that 9 miles for the dog. Like you'd be like,
I
they want to
mean,
bring
it's
dogs into the bar and the restaurants, like put them on the chairs. Like,
mhm.
yeah, we've seen the whole night.
Yeah, and I have nothing against dogs. Like, I'm not trying to America. I'm not trying to come for your pets. I'm just saying, if we were in revolution mode, watch your pet. Watch your pet. Because we know where your heart is located. We know what you really value, and I think that's about as Afro pessimistic as I get, is like, yeah, burn it to the ground. Burn it to the ground and then pee on its ashes. Because I don't know that you can rebuild in a place like this. And that's, people say stuff like that in Black imagination too. And it's really something to think about. I'm super hopeful though. I'm like, my anxiety and depression has everything to do with my hopefulness. So I really do believe that we can level up as people. And that's kind of what I'm ready for. I'm ready for, like, can we all evolve together and just come to metaphorical Jesus about the fact that where you see Black and where you see human, that's the same thing that you're seeing and recognizing. And that when you're recognizing someone as Black, you're recognizing them as indigenous to the continent, like as tracing back, like it's a phenotypic measurement. Whereas like other indigenous groups don't actually have that, despite what Hollywood would convince you of, like indigeneity equals Plains Indian look. Indigeneity is like all sorts of different things. But the cool thing about Blackness is it's like, look, like the earth is claiming us back. Like we look like the earth. It's a call and response situation.
Yes.
Holla at me when the earth claims you kind of thing. But anyway, we digress.
No, but that's a really great segue actually into sort of the next question that I have for you all. And I'll also remind our viewers that you can leave your questions in the chat and I'll relay them to our wonderful guest tonight. So speaking of the connection between imagination and healing, and then talking about what we were just discussing which is like, what is the possibility that we can heal past the legacy of anti-Blackness in this country and how it's spread to all parts of the world? What do we see? And we just talked a little bit about the Afro-pessimism side of it. So maybe let's talk about the Afro-futurist side of it a little bit too, a little bit more. Like,
people need to respect Black women first. Black women and femmes, like there needs to be just like a whole global genuflect to the fact that like the least bitchified people on this planet, okay, the people who be doing things like you got 2 legs cut off but you're still running the race kind of thing, just closing, manifesting, actualizing every day, since the beginning of time. If that can't happen, if people who look like me can't be loved and feel like we belong and we are safe, we're nowhere. Trash. Got to start over again until we're there. And we're definitely not there. It really trips me out when I see people who look like me, like upholding white supremacy with every last breath in their body. The meme of like the possum defending its trash. It's just like, God, I don't know how to save us from that. But I do think that there is absolute power in collectivity, that we haven't had very many choices, but when we do organize and when we are able to sort of take turns and listen to each other and find that common thread, regardless of our sort of phenotype or presentation, that's when real work is possible. But we fall into a lot of sort of divide and conquer pitfalls where people don't really understand like what is intersectionality and like what do you mean that you can be both Black and trans and Black at the same time, and like neither one is sort of canceling the other one out. This is like you're wholly here and you're wholly here as well, and it's happening simultaneously in this sort of like mirror neuron kind of way. I don't know. I would be happy if like during this time of this pandemic and people are like sitting down and they are reading books and they are listening to audiobooks, I would love it if people would also really just do some self-checks on their own critical thinking skills. Like, it's almost safer to do it in private, you know? You just ask yourself, what do you believe? And answer yourself. And then ask yourself why. And then argue with yourself about it, you know? I feel like we're going to have to uproot anti-Blackness somehow, but there's going to be like a big, ugly, uncomfortable moment for a lot of people as they realize that like no one is safe. Like, just being Black does not keep you safe from the anti-Blackness that you've been like snorting like lines off of a stripper's ass your whole life, you know?
I think that's pretty interesting. I like like, I feel like the moments that you mentioned resonated with me because it reminds me a lot of like when organizing and doing like political education. And like Hollywood, I feel like this may be like one of the ways to counteract some of the things that I feel like you brought up, because like I don't think these interrogations happen alone. I think they happen in community. And so I just maybe can't see it happening like in a larger scale, or like maybe in a time like when people do it alone. I feel like this sort of like coming together and to interrogate the things that are happening to yourself in the community could be like very insightful and very like impactful in terms of like that praxis developing and like manifesting in ways that like that show up in your community. Whereas sometimes I feel like we get like a little bit stuck by ourselves. So I think some of that is like, when you get out and say these things aloud, or you hear someone else talking about these things or saying these things, or like things of that such, I feel like it gets a little bit like it has some material, it has some texture that you can kind of grab onto, and then it gives you something to carry on with you. So I think that's just like some one way, because like, it's like, how do you describe like metaphysics? Like, how do you just sit down and be talking to folks about metaphysics, or like, how do you just be like, do some of these things? And these things aren't like, they're not applicable in like one conversation or maybe even three or something like that, sometimes as well as like a novel or a song. We have different ways that we do these things, and Black folks have been, as Natasha brought up before, just call and response. Like, since like before slavery, but like we could say specifically since slavery, we've been calling and responding the same conversation that we're having here today. So like, I feel like the answers to like this sort of like what's next is really within this conversation that we've already been participating in. It's just depending on where you're at in that conversation. So if it's new to you, that don't mean it's new to the world. Like, you usually
there's nothing new to us.
You're late, you're catching up to the world's already kind of like shitty. And so since you're getting here in this part of the conversation, what have you missed? And a lot of that, I think we're not taught like that. We're talking the banking model, the remember things. We're not taught to critically engage and investigate and interrogate. And really, like, the way socialized and structures are happening, we don't even really care so much about our neighbors anymore. It's like, when I was growing up, people would like call my granny and them and be like, "Oh, I seen your grandson on the other side of town."
Exactly. You get busted out. People snitching on you from all over town.
And I'm like, oh, who the hell is this seeing me? And I thought I was being sneaky and things like that. But it's just a level of community interaction that's not there anymore. And somehow we got into this illusion of like calling these police, or like using these violent institutions to perform even more violence on our bodies, And so, yeah, I just think some of that is like that, like this sort of empathy and kindness that doesn't really like show itself in like a capitalist society or like, monetary like value. That's why I feel like it's something that's gonna like really shake it up a little bit. When you like, I guess when you really do ask your neighbor for sugar, it's like, oh, how are you? Like, can I get number? I don't think really good, but like, yeah.
Weed is the new sugar, by the way.
Okay, yeah, during, like, you gotta
during pandemic, if you really want to make friends, you know what I mean? It's not a cup of sugar, but I can separate my life into like two chunks. There's like the life I was living before I gave myself the gift of NK Jemisin, and then there's the life I was living after that. I just
the fifth season.
I just think people need to know, like, Old Testament, New Testament got lots of hype. I don't hear people talking about N.K. Jemisin like they need to, because that is like biblical level goodness.
She's
That
under the
is,
Yeah.
I mean, just
such
imagine, while we're Black imagining real quick, imagine if N.K. Jemisin had like a whole, like a Breath of the Wild style kerching kerching gaming studio at her every whim, so that we could just kazoo right on into her imagination and not even come out for like hours at a time. You know, we just be like rock bending and like moving through time across 30,000 years. Like, can I please, like, escapism? These
Don't
white
catch me.
folks, they love their escapism. Like, I want us to cultivate our own. You know, we've been on some next level shit for a while, you know, and I want us to give ourselves, like, but we're all just like, I don't know, there's this scarcity mindset, so it's like there's not enough to go around. But I actually think we have the juice. We've always had the juice, and we should be the first to quench our own thirst on our own juice. Like, we need to be way more self-interested and self-invested, and that is not selfishness when we do it. We could never do it enough to really fill that hole. So today on Clubhouse, since I'm doing like an unofficial plug for Clubhouse because it's an audio app, and you know I'm into this audio stuff. And right now, at least 60% of the 10 million daily active users are Black. And so that's not out there in any other capacity that I know of. But I heard someone today say, if you are not being reflected, you are in effect being annihilated. And I had never heard it said so decisively. And yeah, I put that on my Instagram stories and quoted, gosh, I really can't remember her name right now, so I don't want to misquote, but it's on my Instagram. And I just think, yeah, that part. Also, I'm seeing that my computer's trying to die on me because it's like Monday and like technical stuff. So I'm going to just quickly run to plug my sucker in so I don't just get absconded completely. Please talk amongst yourselves. 1 second.
Oh, good. In the meantime, Christian, while we're waiting for Natasha to get back, I'd love to hear more too about and we also have just a few more minutes. So hopefully when she gets back, we can start taking some questions from the audience. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on the what we were just talking about a little further, which is the annihilation concept, and how lately it feels like more rapidly Black community ties and Black connections have been kind of torn apart or made more distant. And I want to know if you have thoughts on how that functions in a white supremacist culture and what that means in terms of the concept of annihilation.
I feel like to go back into like the theory of like social death, like Black people are constantly being like, violence is like it's constant, it's nonstop. Like anti-Blackness is like maybe the most visible form is like racism, but anti-Blackness exists in such ways that is like you just can't lick your finger and put it on it and say this is anti-Blackness. So I think that's happening kind of like all the time, whether folks are aware of it or not. We exist in like a world of like structures and systems, and these systems are in place. And so like usually even our whole individuality is influenced by the system and structures that we take part of. And so I think sort of like the reflection of that is like the evolution of our praxis, like, you know, the investigation of the things around you, like really kind of allows you to like, I feel like put up a resistance in terms of like the violence that's been inflicted upon you. Because it's not like, it's like I think about it with like in terms of Afrofuturism, or I think about it in terms of just like dealing with it. It's like how am I making myself okay and the people around me okay, or reducing the violence that everyone is like being inflicted by, you know, and that shows up in like me doing like care work for myself and care work for like the people I care about, you know, like a lot of this is like relationship anarchy, a lot of this is deconstruction of gender. Like gender is like a social construct like that, you know, has been like introduced through colonization. Like, what does that mean, like, for us? You know, what is race as a label, not an identifier? You know, what does that look like?
It's a performance.
Yeah,
It's
and
a
so
performance, but for some folks, we can't opt out. So like all the world's a
get
stage.
into a lot of just performances, a lot of staging, you know, like, and that's the thing that comes up to like a lot of the hard parts is I feel like the like being destroyed, like when I think you have no sort of like you give up like the pessimism, just the pessimism. But like a lot of us figuring out like what does it mean to be fluid in gender? What does it mean to have no gender? What does it mean to like have these like definitions of this race that are prideful, that's not rooted in like, you know, a negative. Like we have the color black is like only in fashion is it like supposed to be kind of good, you know, any other black thing is dirty or whatever the case may be. And you know, white is like holy, etc. So it's a lot of like things that are structures that are in place here that are, I feel like is constantly like at folks. And so I feel like just, you know, us being alive, us thinking about what it means to kind of be happy. You know, you like if you smoke that weed, if you had that drink, if you
I'm
watched
laughing. I'm
HBO
laughing.
Max or took a nap, all of it, like your life is like your joy, your happiness, that intentionality behind it is a sort of resistance, reflection against like I feel like a constant threat that's being like that's always there.
I want to ask y'all a personal question. Am I the only one of the three of us that occasionally fantasizes about like pro-Black aliens coming to Earth? And like they just like us best. And like they definitely are superior. Like there's no question about it. Like ain't nobody trying to argue. Like all the white people have taken a knee. They understand their little nuclear weapons are cute. You know what I mean? It's just like, aw, those are so cute.
No,
And
it's
the aliens just love us. We're just like long lost cousins in the hallway, like all dapping them up. And they just like, yeah, come here, like party with us, travel with us, hang out with us. Am I the only one who like, that's one of my sort of Afrofuturistic happy places? Because the just the positionality shift, like the day that like Blackness is the categorically hot shit that it actually has always actually been, but like is reasserted, reiterated.
Ladies and
gentlemen. Like what a different day, you know, like I'm just thinking of like all the people who are like, I'm not Black, I'm Dominican, like just singing a new song, like you still try not to be Black because it's like cash money gold value, you know, that's what we have always represented, you know. But yeah, I guess I should be more quiet with my revolutionary thoughts sometimes. But I do feel like we could roll around and frolic in a like.
We're the best. Like when niggas are loud and angry and like expressive, this is like the most gorgeous, like beautiful, like, you know, there is. I love loud niggas. I love niggas to be loud as like as possible because like we've been so.
And everybody's loud. They're like, we really got a raw deal on this whole, like, we have to hold up the mantle of loudness for the world. Like, nah. Yeah. No, if you've ever been stuck in a Chinese airport and those loudspeakers just constantly and people yelling across, like, no, we do not have like loudness on lock by any stretch of the imagination. I had a funny conversation with a room full of Trinidadians on Clubhouse. We were telling stories about licks, and I'm telling you, it is this moment of like Afrofuturism, Afropessimism. Like it was really in that liminal space because there was so much validation that we could get witnessing each other's sort of licks being like whoopings, beatings, right? Like stories, and exchanging these in a very call and response way. So that validation was really real because within sort of like a white Western context, no one is making that acceptable. So this was sort of acceptable, which is problematic, right? It was acceptable within this space, but wow, just the resilience. It was like 3 hours of testimonies to resilience, you know? And I think it's a really interesting double-edged sword, this resilience that we have, because our actual resilience is undermining our actual humanity at every moment. And this is something that we have to deal with. Like, how do you convince people you're not magical and you're human while you're absolutely magical at every moment of the day? You know, where is the safety?
You can do, I think a lot of things are both, but I feel like in this particular case, like applying the social death, you can't really convince, people that Black people are human. I feel like it's almost a waste of time. I feel like humanism is created for like the performance of whiteness. So like, we can never be man, we can never be woman, we can never be human. So like, I feel like sort of ascribing to those sort of like, I don't know, standards or whatever, is really a waste of time. Like, what if you don't? What if you just have, what if it's not there? Like what does it do? Like, I know society, I know the performance and the drive because people want to be seen and attractive and blah, 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 and all these other things. But like, yeah, I think it has to, these things are still going to be there and those things are all anti-Black. Like if we can exist in ways that the anti-Blackness doesn't show up in gender and society and like heterosexuality, then like maybe I feel like, but some of these things are gonna still exist when we create these Black spaces. So we need to navigate in the ways that we can create safe spaces, not only for like a certain amount of group of people, but everybody. What does that safety, that joy look like?
We should have our own language. If we had our own language, oh man, like whatever. Oh, you're on mute.
No, I feel like AAVE is our own.
No, but I mean like a diasporic language. So it's not just like a local language.
But I feel like the phenomenon of like,
even if it were like a non-verbal language, like American Sign Language, if it was a gestural language, because I think about like Nnedi Okorafor has characters that they communicate with their hands and their gestures, and it's like part of their history. There's so much of us that isn't present. Amazon delivery is calling one of my children. Sorry, y'all can judge me if you want to. I think I needed something. We call him Uncle Jeff around here. I do feel guilty. I do. I feel bad about it. So bad about it. Yeah, and that's why we can't get free. It's because of people like me who just can't stop being like, but I just need like this one gorgeous notebook or these like really click-clacky pens because life is sad and I need some rainbow colored highlighters to make me feel alive again.
It's not
no, it's terrible. It's bad. It's actually not okay.
Everything's terrible. Everything's terrible. Like I feel like that's the minimum. I always give grace to Black folks.
We have to. That we have to do.
Like, it doesn't apply the same. Like it's not the same. So it's not the same context.
We have to be allowed to make mistakes, and we don't even let ourselves make mistakes. And everybody else is out here just like, could you believe that last presidency, y'all? Like, did you even know you could president like that? What was that? So they're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to make mistakes.
And then at the cost, those mistakes are at the cost of particularly lives, like Black lives. Like that could be an argument, as well. Like, our smaller mistakes or usually Black folks' mistakes don't usually result into like a large like incarceration or like mass death of like folks. Whereas like we see a mistake of someone who's like identified as white can literally easily be the death of someone who's Black. So
I'm happy with my indulgent purchases from the devil himself. Just proving myself right that we're going there in a handbasket. Okay. But if there was a Black Amazon, I would be all about it. Like, can we do this with ourselves for each other? That'd be so great.
I'd love to. We're coming up on the end of our time, so I'd love to spend a few more moments hearing your perspectives about. I think we've been all over the place in this conversation. I love so much. I'd love to
yeah, of course you would be freezing. The audio would be completely freezing. So whatever you said, you looked great saying it. No idea what you said. You want to try that one again? One more again from the top. Thank you.
One more again. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you now.
Yes. So I was just going to give us the opportunity to sort of read the whole. No, not again.
It happened again. It's okay. You're doing great. Just keep going.
You're
Just
like,
push through.
I think you're good now, Shady.
The internet doesn't want us to be great. It's not
It
right.
doesn't. That's racist. It's racism right there. Now, what I'm saying is weaving together all of the things we've been talking about so far tonight, and giving. I'll convey some of the comments from the audience to you all as well, but just giving you a chance to sort of, we talked a little bit about both Afro-Pessimism and Afrofuturism, what those mean. And we talked about healing. And I think healing is probably the key, like the bridge between those two concepts. So I'd love to hear more about what these rituals specifically from Black imagination have to do with healing and what your thoughts are on that, what it means to perform a ritual, what it means to seek
Can I read one?
healing.
Yeah, you should read one. It's so humiliating for me because it's like no accident that I have like 5 words in my book, and
yeah, it's
a lot of space for everybody else.
It's really short, but I think it's really good. It's by Shayla from Atlanta, Georgia. And says, I cry, I laugh, I eat, I sing, I dance, I scream. I talk to my sisters. I replay events over in my mind. I sleep, I do rituals, I engage in ceremony. And I really love that. I feel like it was so simple. It wasn't complex. It wasn't doing all the things that it could have been. It was just like, this is like what would be healing for me. This right here, this would be good. And I was just like, wow. I really, like, if I had all of that, I could be happy.
Well, how do we heal ourselves? Like when you feel like you're healing yourself, what is actually happening?
I think it's
for
work.
me,
it's all of these things. Yeah.
But see, if it's work, you got to interrogate that, right? Like, what is that about? Is that actually like, is that you or is that programming? Right? Because I very much am of the school of I give myself cookies when I'm being productive. But I should be able to give myself cookies for existing. I shouldn't have to be productive too, wherein the internal massa is driving me to just be productive all the time. But I find the sun to be very healing on just like the most fundamental level. Like as a melanated person, I actually feel like I'm plugging myself in, like I'm re-upping my energy when I can bake in the sun, like really get somewhere equatorial and flip it over. You know what I mean? Just like really just re-engage with the sun is just a real fundamental.
I've been into nature a little bit more lately. I haven't really been like, I'm more of an air condition type person, but there's a lot of mountains over here, hills and like in the Bay Area. So it's been really cool just to kind of like, I haven't really gone out and explored, but just like every like corner, there's like hilly mountains in the background. So it's been a vibe to kind of like I feel like be more like in a nature surrounded sort of like environment where like in DC you can't really see any trees or like anything that like it's like city I feel like, whereas like I'm just a little bit outside of like a really big city, so I kind of still have some of that little nature still in there.
Yeah, nature is like, I'm not a nature girl in that way that like I've known people for 20 years who are like, let's go hiking, let's go hiking, let's go hiking. It's like
I'm never going to go camping for like 3-5 days.
Right. But I'm at the point in the pandemic where it's like, actually, I'm thinking about hiking out of just desperation. But I really think that like what we can get from each other in an immediate sense is if we've given each other, like if we've given ourselves permission to take care of our mental health, like with a professional, if we could make like pyramid schemes out of that, that would be really great. Because like if every Black person in therapy could like get 10 more Black people into therapy, and also talking to young Black people about becoming therapists, that would be really, really amazing, because there's not a whole lot of space for us there. We have like generations of, indoctrination, like walk it off, you don't need to do that. But it is very much how we process the generational trauma that we're carrying around with us. And I don't know about y'all, but my therapist just helps me recognize my own patterns. Really, for the most part, is like someone who helps me narrate like what is happening repeatedly and like why this could be happening. Like, what is this behavior about? Like, let's be self-aware about it. And you know, if you don't ever interrogate yourself because you don't have like a trusted spotter to do that with, like there's so much potential growth in it, just like there's so much growth that can come from just listening to each other. You know, like how many times have you heard like a friend tell you like a medical story, like of some, you know, and then you thought completely differently about like having surgeries or going to the orthodontist because they had such an appalling, you know, experience. Like I've heard so many appalling Black medical stories. And I think it's because our health is in crisis that we absolutely need to show up for each other with grace, ready to make mistakes with each other, ready to course correct with each other, and then like ready to catch each other when we're falling too. But we can't do that if we're like, you know, not taking care of ourselves.
I would want up that just with like join an org or organization or start an organization with your friends, you know, or people that you know, you don't like the organization you're in and you don't see one you like, you can make one and join a new one. I think like instead of like everyone should be a waiter, everyone should be community organizing. Everyone needs to be a part of the community that you're occupying. You need to like interrogate yourself why you're comfortable with like being in a place and not like knowing what's happening around there. I think those are like you know follow-ups to like what you said, because it's like how are we doing this? I was trying to think how are we doing this outside of capitalism? Because therapy only comes at the price of money. So if you don't have money, you usually don't have therapy. And so like yeah, I think therapy or like you know prescription pills or like psychoanalysis was like great, but like the
But
likelihood of like
reimagining
everyone,
therapy too.
yeah, I
Reimagining
mean,
therapy, because like I
yes,
said, this 3 hour conversation with a bunch of Trinidadians about
which
how we
is
got licks was hella therapeutic
yes,
and nobody spent a dime. There
right.
was much laughter, you know, just in that acknowledgement, just in reflecting each other to each other. There was a lot of healing in that. And I think that is sort of the space that the project itself is trying to take up for me. Like Black imagination is an invitation. Like let's be active in healing ourselves. What does that look like? And it would be dumb for me not to say to your folks that like submissions are open for book 2 of Black imagination.
Oh,
So Black
yeah,
people that
wait,
you
yeah,
know
hold
who
on,
are
wait for it.
awesome,
What? Who
yeah.
knew? Wait,
So
we could have been shouting this out. But not,
right. So please text your friends and let them know, like, it obviously doesn't matter how old you are, what language you speak, you know, how society views the abilities or inabilities of your body, your gender. None of that is relevant. The only relevant piece is, do you identify as Black every day? And if so, you can go to black-imagination.com. There's an exhibit right now, actually the 5th Black Imagination exhibition is live on the site right now. But if you click on connect on that page, it'll have the portal, the submission portal. And submissions can be done in audio and text and probably video too. So you could be, you know, sitting in a car answering prompts like how do you heal yourself on your voice memo and then just upload it. Because I very much still am looking for voices that need to be centered and heard right now. And I think maybe through this sort of like kinesthetic publishing practice, you know, white organizations like McSweeney's will begin to see like the value in like really hearing, and I think they do, in putting your ear to the ground and really listening for whose voice you haven't heard in a whole moment. And it doesn't matter what that conversation is, whether it's about Afro-pessimism, Afrofuturism, like we've heard all the white men, like we've heard them all. And I don't even know how you can be publishing white men anymore. Like I will routinely say to people, and this is so inappropriate, but like I'll turn to my friends in Seattle and I'll be like, did you see so-and-so like Mary and Chad are getting married? Like white people are still marrying white people. Like I just don't even understand that. Like, wow, like what is that? That's so vintage. Like I don't even get it,
it's
you
like
know?
in the whole place.
But yeah, it happens. It happens. I mean, people are still getting like big publishing contracts, and I don't understand why. We've heard every story from the white imagination, and the white imagination is just not that riveting. but like give yourself some Tommy Adeyemi, give yourself some Nnedi Okorafor, give yourself some N.K. Jemisin. If you come back from N.K. Jemisin unchanged, like I will buy you a coffee because I don't believe it. I just don't
so
believe
much
it.
more out there too. That's the thing that's like so beautiful about it is like those like three are the real most
They're
popular
the
ones.
gateway. They're the starters.
It's like so much behind that too. That's the exciting part about it is like once we get right past Nnedi, once we get past NK, like it's literally it's like the floor is down of like black and black person.
I just recently discovered Cixin Liu, and I'm totally mispronouncing this gentleman's name. It's Cixin Liu. He's like the N.K. Jemisin of China, wrote on some next level shit. Just
I think his book, they got a TV show coming out.
Yeah, so I started with The Three Body Problem. And it's a trilogy, and it's just, again, like if you just want to pop your own little brain, start with Black women first, do your homework first. You got to start with the black women and femmes first. But you know, when you're ready to branch out, like they're like, to me, science fiction, speculative fiction, Afrofuturism, like that's where that top shelf imagination is, you know. So if you're ready to graduate beyond like, you know, superheroes, no shade, but like just beyond the like sort of everyday mainstream highlights, I really think that no one can imagine like a Black femme, like, wow, because we've had to just get to this point. So I'm really excited about getting submissions. Yes.
We have a commenter who asks if you all can repeat those gateway author names again. And then, yes, I would love to hear that submission website again. And if you could actually drop it in the chat, I'll be able to share it with our viewers and we can all share it around. Hearing that there's already a part 2.
The authors are N.K. Jemisin. So N.K. Jemisin's latest book is The City We Became, which is the first in a trilogy, which may not happen because N.K. Jemisin just won the Genius Award. And was basically like, hey, y'all, so I'm going to do whatever I want now. Love it.
Yes.
And I love that. So like, I'm in support of that, but I'm also kind of hoping that the other 2 books of this trilogy do come out. And I feel guilty because like, I have many times thought to myself, just in a moment of silence, like, I hope Nora is writing right now. Because I'm going to need, like, I need to read her book so immediately that the period afterwards, the like separation, there's probably a German word for like when you have waited for 18 months for a book to come out and then you read it as slowly as you could in 35 seconds. And then there's this fallow period until they write their next 3,000 page book or whatever. Yeah, but it was N.K. Jemisin, excuse me. N.K. Jemisin, Tommy Adeyemi, and Nnedi Okorafor, I think are like great that's the starter pack for blowing your own mind with Black femmes. And then you can submit to Black Imagination via the website, black-imagination.com. You'll click on the Connect tab, and then you'll see the link for submissions there.
Great, and I'm just dropping those in the chat.
I can't. What's her? I always pronounce her name wrong. It's like Ivey, like Ivey. Don't pronounce that right. The one who did Pet and Freshwater and Vivek, the death of Vivek OG. I mispronounced that name.
I can't help you with the pronunciation, but I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Every time I burn through their books. Like burn through them. So like the death of Vivek OG was so. I read it in 2 days. Like less than 48 hours. I was like, oh wow, this is like, I was emotional. I was like really attached. It's really this very specific type of like writing that they do that like remind like you were saying, N.K. Jemisin, like the Broken Earth trilogy. Read it in like maybe like 2 weeks. I was hooked, burned to it, and I hadn't even touched the first.
Children were ignored. Yeah. Let me tell you, it was like children. There's food in the kitchen area.
She did such a good job. I was raving about it for so long. Like I was telling everyone. I don't know if you know, but it's supposed to be getting turned into a TV show for TNT.
I'm terrified. I'm frightened. I'm excited, but I'm also frightened.
Yeah.
I really want the gaming people, the like big budget gaming people, to go and like lay flowers at N.K. Jemisin's feet, because I think that in a gaming realm, there's even more, because there's kind of like only one way to pivot around it in television, but as a game, like you could go in all the directions and really like inhabit those spaces. So that's I pray to the universe for that. That's my own little like secular like, dear universe, please let N.K. Jemisin get into video games at some point.
I'm ready.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm so ready.
But I think they're
So
also
it
making a film of the 3 body problem as well. That book that I mentioned. That,
I think
Susan,
Netflix got it or somebody.
yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
got it picked it up. But yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's like for me, it's a weird thing now that they're turning all these, not all of these, but like how they're turning books into TV show movies now. It's like I don't know. It changed from like the previous sort of like trend of publishing. Like I feel like these books are like they're like giving it's like it's happening so quick maybe, or like I think it's an interesting thing happening now. Like I don't know how that's gonna like change the way that we're like receiving literature. You know, if the literature doesn't, if it's not ready for like TV or movie, will we still receive it? You know, 10 years from now, if that's the trend, or I don't know. I just kind of think about that sometimes.
I love talking to y'all, and it's obvious that like we could hang. Like, I don't know if y'all have just this like lovely chemistry with just everyone you talk to, but I definitely pay attention to that in the pandemic. It's like, oh, we fucks with each other. This is cool. Yeah. So, you know,
yeah,
maybe we want to do this again for fun. But I know you're probably, Shady, you're probably trying to like corral us into like a closing position.
Yeah,
so
maybe we can do a Clubhouse later, or you know, in the future.
I'll be on Clubhouse wasting my life like I do.
Right.
So I'll be there.
I'm addicted.
So find me there.
Yeah, let me catch both of you there. I think we could obviously keep going forever if we wanted to. But let's take this opportunity to say goodbye to our viewers at least and end our live stream. Thank you so much, Natasha, for being here. And Christian, thank you so much. Your words have been amazing. And this has been the most interesting train ride I've ever had.
I know it. Is there anybody on the little car with you? Like, are people like trying to act like they're not fascinated by your conversation, or?
Oh yeah, they're around.
Yeah.
One person that just keeps passing by over and over again. We'll see what that's about. But thank you all so much. And thank you to Lost City Books. And we've got a lot of comments that are saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. A lot of Black folks were tuning in tonight. So I'm very happy to see those comments.
You know, we love that. Hey.
Yes. Sex work is real work. Trans women are women. All Black lives matter.
Yeah,
and we're allowed to make mistakes. We're allowed to make mistakes.
Be kind to us.
Yes.
This is so beautiful. I'm going to follow up with both of y'all and make sure we can continue having a convo on the side. But for now, good night.
Yes. Thank you. Good night.